Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. We kick off a new week with a new edition of Money Monday. And our focus this afternoon is twofold. It is the start of a new year, so we'll explore a couple of key questions. We'll discuss paying down your home mortgage, and we'll learn about receiving an inheritance or life insurance payout. Our Money Monday expert is certified financial planner Christine Moriarty. Christine is the president of Money Peace in Bristol, and she joins us each month to address specific money-related topics. Thank you so much for coming in again.
So glad to be here, Fran.
Okay. So today, you know, I guess fortunately we actually don't face this question very often, this whole thing about inheritance and or life insurance. But what do we do when that time comes?
Well, it's also a question no one wants to answer.
Sure.
And when the standard answer that I give people, and it's in the industry, don't do anything for a year.
That's
so
great.
That's
the
great
advice.
Overarching umbrella.
Right.
People think, oh, I have to do something. But when they're grieving, that's not a great time to make good financial decisions.
Yeah.
There is estate things on death, if you're the one responsible, that you have to finish up and pay the funeral costs. Or
Sure, there are costs right
There's
away.
costs and bills to pay right away. But you personally, if you get an inheritance, you can go, oh, let me pause, because typically it's unexpected or untimely.
Right.
You don't know when it was coming.
Right.
So just pause.
Yeah, and maybe even, you know, get who do I need to help me through this time?
Absolutely,
Right.
because here's what I was, and I was thinking about this on the drive in, is that the average person says, oh, this was, and we'll use my parents financial advisor, this was my parents' insurance person, this was my parents' lawyer, I'll just use them.
Right.
And I say, yeah, for probably the immediate time, that's perfect. But when you go to buy a car, do you say, oh, that's the car my parents drove, I'll just go drive that one? Or the first one you drive, do you take off in it?
Right.
This is bigger life decisions. You should be interviewing and talking to different people who approach your finances differently if
Sure.
you need the advice on it.
And feel comfortable with, of course, that's
Absolutely.
a big thing.
Major. And sometimes people's planners or lawyers were great for their parents, but they're not right for you, and you're
Right.
not comfortable with them, or they look at you as someone's child rather than
That's also a
Yeah.
very good
Yes.
point. So when it comes to a cash inheritance, what are your recommendations?
The recommendations are you have a couple of things to do. You can do nothing, as we said, hit the pause button. But as our slide shows, you can talk about like the emotional side of it. Do you want to do I need to pay off debt? How's this feel? I tell people put it in the bank for a while.
For a
And
while.
just
That whole take your time.
Take your time.
Right.
So then
we go.
people say, do I pay off my debts or my mortgage with it?
Right.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. First, we need to consider the financial and the emotional. One is, what if I did pay it off? How would that feel?
Right.
And most people feel pretty good to say, oh my God, I own my house myself rather than with the bank. The
Right.
second is, what's your balance? Because you might not have enough to pay it off, or you might have more than enough. And are you planning on moving soon? Because in that case, if you had enough to pay off the mortgage, but that's it, so you had a $40,000 mortgage and you
Right.
had $45,000, you wouldn't want to put everything towards your mortgage, because if you were going to move soon, you need a down payment
Right.
or something, so you're going to need some cash available.
Anticipating those
Anticipating.
needs.
And paying off the balance on a mortgage sounds great. With you got $50,000 and your mortgage is 80, and you
Right.
could pay off a bunch of it.
Yeah.
One of the recommendations I've made to someone recently was, if it feels too scary to use all that money that you didn't even expect getting,
Right.
then pay off 20,000 and then 20,000 more, so that don't get overwhelmed with that emotional side.
So that's great advice. So it's very possible you can pay off a big chunk,
Yeah.
so maybe your payment goes down if you want a little.
No, your payment doesn't go down. You're still, unless you remortgage. But by paying
Okay.
off, you're not letting go of this big chunk of money that you just got.
Right.
And
Right.
to refinance a mortgage, it costs money, so it may not be the best option.
Okay.
But to pay off a big chunk means you'll get it paid off quicker.
Right. So
and
there's
less interest.
some of that capital down.
Right.
So was this the advice that this viewer that wrote in to you
Yeah.
about this? Like what do I do?
She asked, should I pay off my mortgage? So that's the first important thing is look at the emotional side, ask yourself the questions, are you going to be moving soon? Do you have some cash to set
Right.
aside? Then the financial side, you have to look at that. I'm a financial planner, right? So in the next slide, there's three things to think about. One is, do you get a tax deduction for it now?
Right.
So after the emotional pieces,
Here we
we
go.
go to the taxes. You maybe don't get a tax deduction for this mortgage now. So that would be a good reason to pay it off. You're just paying someone interest. What's the interest rate? And so if the interest rate's low or high, you have some information. If it's high, you definitely want to pay it off as soon as you can if
Right.
it's over 3%. If it's lower, you might say, well, maybe I can go slower paying it off. And the other question is, what other income do you have coming in? Because we're talking about an inheritance in general, but if
Right.
this was a spouse that just passed away, your other income may have decreased. So you
Right.
don't want to use a big chunk to pay it off.
So do you invest that? You do.
That's where you need a financial person because it
Okay.
depends on age, what your other income is, and you don't want to invest in anything you don't understand. But you also, I know someone who received money when her husband died.
Yeah.
She just put it in the bank in CDs so that every year she got a chunk of money to make up for what she wasn't getting from the other sources of income while he was alive.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's more than
So-
one way to do it.
So you need, I'm kind of coming back to this team thing. You need your tax guy, probably a lawyer to
It
check.
could be a tax woman, friend.
Or,
I couldn't resist.
Thank
So
you.
yes, so you need a tax person.
Tax person, an investment person,
lawyer?
and maybe talk to the bank about mortgage and
Right, and you need a lawyer.
right.
And that's important. If you got an inheritance, you want to make sure that you have a good plan if you pass on.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that at some point
At
in
some
more
point,
detail,
right.
but it's really important because this inheritance, you might get money, you might get stuff, you might get jewelry.
Right. So if
So
you
what
get
did
stuff, I mean, you might get a house.
Right, you might get a house. So what do I do with the house? Do we
Right.
move into the house? Do we rent the house? Sometimes, again, when you're the most emotional state, you don't want to make permanent decisions at that time, and you
Yeah.
need someone objective to help you.
Right, and I think that taking the time is one of the most important things you can do. So again, if you're just because you might be able to pay off that mortgage and not pay that $1,000 a month, you're suggesting don't go there right away.
Well,
For the most part, depends on your situation.
right. Look at the emotional and financial sides of it.
So when you
And
talk
you
about
could-
emotional,
It might be 6 months.
right? What are you mainly talking about? Just let your grieving happen and,
Right.
and wait, or are
And-
there other emotional pieces to all of this?
There is. We talked about paying off the mortgage with a big chunk of money and then having that disappear. That's a big emotional piece.
Right.
So grieving is part of that. And, the important comments that I have is grieving's not easy and financial management's not easy. So that's why you want to take time. So don't do anything major for 1 year. Paying off your mortgage, you might at least put it off 6 months so that feel comfortable. Think long term. What do you need long term? And it's hard to think long term when you're grieving. You just want to
Right.
get through today. And feel comfortable before you act with your financial people, with the choices you make because they're your choices. And I want to put in a caveat. People think, after this grieving piece is, oh my gosh, that's so great because I'll pay off. I won't have to pay $1,000 a month anymore.
Right.
However, a lot of people don't have, beyond that grief, the financial things we want to think about is, does your mortgage hold your insurance?
Oh.
And is it paying your real estate taxes? Because part of that $1,000 could be $100 a month is going towards the insurance company and $200 a month of that is going towards real estate taxes. So you still might have a payment or a reason to save to
Sure.
put that away.
put that aside to make sure all of those things are also taken care of.
Right. Whereas people who are only thinking, oh, my mortgage is paid off, might get surprised later down the road.
Right. Because some mortgages take care of those things.
Right.
Okay, mine didn't, so
it's
that's really good
right,
information
some of
for
them
me.
do. So you need to think, this is why it's more complex, and I said when you're grieving, that's not the time to be making all these decisions because you miss things.
Right. Are there any other things that we should consider putting money aside? You say home improvement, some
Absolutely. So the things I think of is the home improvements. So sometimes people inherit money and they're older and they may need a stair lift, or they may need a handicap tub or something so they can stay in their house if that's going to be their choice. They may have delayed putting a roof on because of the expense of it, or some home maintenance things. So that, especially weatherizing in this weather, right? The other thing, so that's one, home improvements if you're staying in your home. Two is you want a safety account. You want some cash to fall back on, and a lot of people, we've seen in the studies, don't have
that cushion.
And so think about having 3 months of living expenses at least.
Right.
And that could be part of what you get as an inheritance, is that. And then for an inheritance, I don't want to forget the enjoy piece of it, but you might want to do something fun or to honor that person. I know someone who got an inheritance from their uncle, and they went and bought a kayak with it. It was $1,000.
Something we want to do.
Right.
So take your time, think in the long term, think about all these things. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christine, for coming in. If you want some more information and to send in your questions about money matters, you can go to www.moneypeace.com or even call Christine with your questions at 802-453-5913. Thank you again, Christine.
Great. Now look forward to answering those questions on the future shows.
All right. Terrific, Christine. And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard.